I can't hear you.
Well, I haven't said anything yet.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
How are you?
All right. Loving the everyday snow in Gravenhurst.
What's it like living in Gravenhurst?
Sad.
How long have you been up there?
July of 2024.
Why did you move to Gravenhurst?
Yes. Why does anyone that is not, you know, so rich that they can afford some sort of like fourth home there live in Gravenhurst? But it's because I'm developing with a business partner of mine the land that Andrew had signed over to me. It's west of Burks Falls, and it's in the middle of nowhere, literally. But it's being developed under his name.
Well, before we go any further, this is the first time I've ever, seen you or Zooming right now. We've never met, but I just want to make sure I extend to you my sincere condolences on the loss of your husband, Andrew Krystal.
Thank you. I see it. I see it as his loss. I mourn his loss. It's a very strange thing to describe, and perhaps that sounds crazy, but it's been very painful for me.
Well, is it okay if I explore that just a little bit? Like, obviously, don't, if you're not comfortable, you can tap out, of course. But it's been almost 4 years since we lost Andrew. Like, how are you holding up? Does it get easier with time, or is that bullshit that we say to make people feel better?
I think, well, everyone's different. I gauge it from my parents lost their 6-year-old son. So for me, this losing a child is the ultimate loss. And then there's all sorts of losses. Someone that you've spent a significant portion of your life with that is gone is a loss. So it's not like a lost contest or anything, but it blew me. It's as though I was standing on the bow of a deck somewhere and the wind blew me into the ocean and I just disappeared. It was I had poured so much of my life and identity into him. And so I don't know what's worse because it feels like I've lost a significant portion of my life, but then I also mourn his life and what he could have done in addition to what he was at the height of what I would say the height of his career and happiness, which is what I lament the most. When I walk anywhere or see anything, I want to, or even today's politics. I mean, this whole thing with Donald Fart, I mean, I don't even know what his show would have looked like with the second Donald Fart term, to be honest with you. I don't know how, he might have had to check himself in for therapy because uh, it's the upside down world.
Michelle, I just want to give the listenership a little context here. So, when could you share with us how and when you met Andrew Crystal?
Yeah, I accosted him at his, he was, it's a long story. How much time do we
Oh,
have here?
I'll make time for this story.
Okay, so I had what is sort of regarded as a cushy job during my naval service as a 2-year tenure to drive the Commodore around and also accompany the Commodore at sea. Uh, so
What's
anyway,
the Commodore? I'm so stupid. What is that?
the Atlantic Naval Fleet, the
Okay.
which has now apparently gone back to the Royal Canadian Navy.
Okay.
Anyway, long story longer, I'm sitting in his car with the flags, waiting for him to finish meeting. Then I drive him here and there. And I would And so obviously this is a very boring job. The job being sitting in a car waiting for someone for 3 or 4 hours. So I started shuffling through the channels and stumbled across this News 95.7 show, which apparently Andrew was hired there in 2005. And as soon as I heard it, and I have nothing to base this on because I'd never heard talk radio before, but I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe the voice. I couldn't believe the topics. I couldn't believe the intelligence. And I couldn't believe that it was just so much easier to sit in the car for that long during those periods of time, being 9 till noon. Uh, and so this goes on. I he had a contest to win tickets to the Rolling Stones in the Halifax Commons. So he had put it out to callers. Well, tell us your funniest story about how you think Keith Richards hurt himself in whatever exotic island he was on. And I said he fell out of a coconut tree because of his Tahitian swimmer's itch. And I'm pretty sure that was the funniest call in, but he didn't like it and he gave the tickets to someone else. Well, the concert got rained out. I mean, it still went on, but everyone stood there in yellow raincoats as they like to do in Nova Scotia. And it was horrible. And he was at the concert with his then girlfriend. So in later years, I was like, haha, on you. So it goes on because that's not even how we met. Uh, I was on the HMCS Athabascan during a tour from hell. About 80% of the ship's company was sick. Some of us were still able to, you know, walk. And there was this talk show host from Ottawa on there and he had a show called Nick at Night. And I thought, I'm going to use this as an excuse because I'm in the men's mess at night playing Risk with this guy and poker and whatever else we were playing. Um, and I'm like, I'm going to use this as an excuse to meet Andrew. So I emailed Andrew from the HMCS Athabascan saying, oh, I'm here. I'm so and so. I'm on board the HMCS Athabascan with this individual. Maybe we could all get together when I get back ashore. And he said, yeah, yeah, that's great. It's a great idea. So I show up at his planned, uh, yes, we'll meet on this date. I believe, I want to say it was a Friday at noon when the show was over in the lobby, and he's a no show. And it was a Friday, definitely, because I went home for the weekend forlorn, but I'm still on vacation for another 2 weeks. So, like, well, just for the sake of it, I'm going to go back Monday and do the exact same thing. So, on this particular Monday, he didn't duck out the back door. He thought I was like some sort of Navy diesel dyke and really didn't want to meet me. Anyway, so there I was on the Monday, and he looks at me, and from what he said later, he gave his receptionist shit for not telling her that
Well,
the
let me read between the
circumstances.
lines. Okay, you're quite the looker.
No, I'm not.
No?
Maybe at that time
Well,
or
I mean,
whatever
I
he
can see you on the
thought.
Zoom. You're still very attractive, but the bottom line is he didn't expect you to be hot.
He expected a 400-pound diesel dyke that wanted to move in with him right away. That's what he thought.
So is it love at first sight? What happens next?
That was crazy as dry cleaning was showing up at my apartment in no time. And we had this apartment. He liked my apartment better because I lived right beside Starbucks, but his apartment had the good view. So I ended up relinquishing my apartment and moving in with him. And then the rest is what it is.
When do you move with him back to Toronto here?
That would have been 2010 when he was about to join Fan 590. So I want to say July of 2010, I think.
Okay. Okay. So just for the listenership, I need to just cover a few lines here. So basically, you don't know Andrew Krystal during his Mojo Radio years. You meet
Correct.
him. So you meet him in Halifax because he leaves Toronto for Halifax. He's on the. That's when you hear him, and you guys fall in love. I'm guessing. And do you eventually get married?
Yes, we did that too.
Okay, but did you get married before you moved to Toronto?
Yes.
See, I'm collecting all the bits and bytes here. Okay, so you're in 2010. He gets the job, Andrew Krystal. He gets the job at the Fan 590. He's the morning show host. Kind of a controversial hiring in the world of Toronto sports media because Andrew Krystal, not exactly known for his sport. He could talk about anything. He's a big Leafs fan. We'll talk about it. But this was a surprising hire, and it didn't last particularly long. But then he went and did other things at Rogers, like City News and different things here. So let me just ask you, because I produced the Humble and Fred show, and Howard was tight with Andrew Krystal, and he would talk about these legendary parties. Like, are you involved with these like New Year's parties and stuff, the Krystal parties?
I didn't know that it had landed on the circuit of discussion. Yes, that was my inception. It was a maritime thing, really. Or, it would be Maritimers or any political legislatures or whatever does these things. And I'd said to him, let's have these New Year's Day parties. Like, nobody does it. They're fun. Everybody wants a hangover cure. And they became just this crazy mix of young and old. I mean, I'm talking, it can't be home alone young and people, octogenarians, let's say,
Well,
uh, boxers, politicians, everything. It was crazy. It was craziness. In and out the door. These parties ran about 18 hours long.
well, that's again. I never had the pleasure of being invited to one of these parties.
I didn't know that you existed.
No, I'm not going to blame you. That's for sure. But I do hear from Humble Howard, who attended a party or two, and he would tell me something like he'd say, "Oh, Pinball Mike Clemens showed up," and then he'd say, "Oh my God, there's Hazel McCallion." You mentioned old. That's as old as it gets.
Yeah, George Chavallo and the Weasel, uh, you know, famously Jimmy Hoffa's driver who, I don't know, pissed off a few people.
There's the real
it,
talk.
it was nuts. You never knew who was going to walk through the door.
Okay, so you're in love, you're married to Andrew Krystal, but what's interesting to me is that before you fell in love with Andrew Krystal, you loved him as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
You loved him as a talk radio host.
Yes. Yes. That's where I probably fell in love with him while I was sitting in the Commodore's vehicle. Is what happened. I just loved it. I hadn't heard anything like it before.
What I always, and I said this to Andrew, but he doesn't really fit into these boxes we have. Like we like things to kind of fit into these preformed boxes, and he was sort of difficult. Like he was many things, and I think the industry struggled with what to do with an Andrew Krystal.
Yes, well, that's exactly I can only speak to what happened when we went to Toronto because I didn't even know him when he landed the News 95.7 gig until I think, well, he'd have been there a year and a half, 2 years before I'd met him. So I only know what happened in Toronto. And he was a hot potato
Yeah.
for sure. And I mean, I guess, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but what got him out of Fan 590 was making a comment about Brian Burke's personal situation. And of course, back then, Brian Burke was the general manager of the Leafs. So Brian Burke got in his car exactly the next day, straight to Fan 590 Rogers at, what is it? Mount Pleasant and Bloor.
Yep.
And that was the end of Andrew's tenure at Fan 590.
See, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's what happened. And somebody threw him a line. But see, this is a weird time for Fan 590 back then because they were going through hosts like toilet paper. They had no identity. Uh, I can't even remember the general manager's name. No, the program manager.
Don Collins?
Yes. And so he's juggling all these balls. Nobody likes anything, and people were getting shuffled and fired and humiliated all over the place at this point. So it was a really weird time for the station then.
And I do remember, so after he leaves, and I can't remember if that's when Greg Brady and
Yeah.
Jim Lang show up. I think they come in after Krystal. I can't remember if I have this right, but I know
Yeah.
before.
At that point, we weren't paying a whole lot of attention because Andrew had landed a spot on City News.
Well, which is
So,
interesting to pause there because Rogers gets this call from Brian Burke, but they don't toss him out of the company. They just take him off the airwaves, the sports radio
yeah.
airwaves. But City News is owned by Rogers. If people don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, of course. And he did some amazing stuff on City News. I'm sure Cynthia Mulligan and Avery Haynes loved him. Roger Peterson probably, and I'm remiss to forget the other person's name. But he'd do crazy stuff like he would go out on the streets as a panhandler for, I think he did it for a week. It was at least a week panhandling and reported on the neighborhoods that were the most lucrative. And apparently, the so-called Mink Mile, as it used to be called, between Bloor and Avenue Road, is the least lucrative place to bum money. And I
Interesting.
remember to this day the statement at I guess towards the end of, it's not really a documentary, but a docu-series. And he said the people that have the least give the most.
I'm not
Or
surprised.
yeah, and there was this disgusting heat wave, and all the men on the program were expected to still go out and report on their three-piece suit. And I don't know who else was involved in this, but the broadcast went out that night of him standing knee deep in Lake Ontario, broadcasting about the heat in Toronto in his suit, I might add.
Yeah, like I said, tough to put him in a bucket, like a compartment, because he was a very talented, very creative broadcaster. And you knew that before you fell in love with the man.
Yeah. And this is, I have to proclaim my naivety or isolation or whatever you want to call it, but I had no experience. I had never heard talk radio before. I grew up in Nova Scotia and joined the military at the age of 20. And I certainly wasn't uh, listening to talk radio.
No, they don't tend to get a lot of 20-year-old listeners.
Well, I was out in the middle of the woods on exercise or deployed, so there wasn't a whole lot of television or radio in my life during those years.
So did you retire before you moved to Toronto? Like you're not currently with the Navy, obviously.
No, I served in the Army and the Navy for 15 years, and I left when I met Andrew, basically. I was like, yeah, I think it's time to move on.
And I mean, again, we talked about how you're quite the looker. We've already established that, but I should also point out you and I are basically the exact same age. Which is to
Yeah,
say, I think what I'm trying to say is that you're no Hazel McCallion, okay, Michelle? You are very, very young.
well, I would also like to say that I don't think I'm good looking. That was what Andrew had said to his receptionist. But yeah, I'm 52, so
Okay.
didn't you say no? I'm a year older than you.
Well, I'm born in '74. Are you 73?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. So you're my elder. I must respect you as my elder here.
Yes.
But in April 2020, I finally I had been working on getting Andrew Krystal to visit the TMDS basement for a sit down ever since I met him through Humble and Fred. I met him. We talked on a phone call where I told you I was at that Horseshoe event. We had a Humble and Fred Christmas party at the Horseshoe, and I chatted up Andrew Krystal there. And it turns out you were there that morning.
Uh, I, I,
Maybe. No?
I was, I was at a lot of events.
You might have been there. It's all bleeding together. But my point is, I tried very hard to get Andrew Krystal in person because I thought, I like his energy. I have a different but similar energy. I can relate to his energy anyway. And I kind of wanted him sitting right here, and then we can do it proper. And then,
Exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm confused as to why he didn't. I think I can only assume he literally was too busy to
No.
go because this was in the middle of the Sirius XM broadcasting, which was such a specific time frame plus his other business that he was involved in.
Well, I'm
And
glad you mentioned SiriusXM because producers of his show, and I hope they're listening right now, I would have many email correspondence with these gentlemen regarding getting Andrew in the basement because they thought he would be great on this program. Because I give my guests a lot of room to be themselves and to breathe. There's nothing really rushed. I feel like that's where Andrew Krystal would really shine.
yeah, it's well, isn't this a thing amongst talents such as yourself or say a Bill Maher or whatever that they don't really like being around people in their neighborhood. They like a comedian's not going to go to another comedian show and say, "Wow, all that was funny and great." Like there's a little bit of a I like you, but I don't really
Right.
kind of thing.
But I'm building towards the fact in April 2020. So when does that pandemic strike us? March. Okay, so it's like a
Yeah,
month into the pandemic.
yeah, yeah.
He does agree to a phoner, like not a Zoom, I'll point out, like we're doing right now where we can see each other. But Andrew's like, okay, you can phone me and record the call.
I don't know.
You
He
know,
didn't discuss it with me.
no.
I was there when he did the interview, but he didn't really discuss the meat and bones of his decisions on that one.
Because as listeners know, it's one thing. I prefer you in the basement, but I will do a Zoom if I need to. But the phoners is a whole different category because you can't see me, I can't see you, and Andrew would kind of get into one of his roles because his synapses would be firing, and then you can't really talk over that. You kind of have to wait
Yeah.
for a pause, which may never come. So I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I never knew what to think of it. But I'm gonna read the description because people might want to go back and listen to it. But I'm gonna read the description and then I'm gonna ask you a big question about this episode. So this was April
Okay.
2020.
Mm-hmm.
In the 630th episode, too bad it wasn't 640. I was 10 away from it being 640, but okay. In the 630th episode, Mike chats with broadcaster and marketer. We haven't really talked about that yet. Andrew Krystal about his years at Mojo Radio, being the Fan 590's morning show host, speaking with Rob and Doug Ford at City News, his show on Sirius XM 167, and so much more. So we chatted for about 70 minutes. Did you, Michelle Krystal, ever hear that episode of Toronto Mike with your husband, Andrew Krystal?
I did, yes. I listened to the full interview. I loved it. See, the thing is, I wasn't part of his life then, and I you knew more about what he was talking about than I did. I thought it was a very humble yet what's the word? It was I thought it was sharp. I thought he had some observations that some people wouldn't say out loud.
Without a doubt, which is refreshing and I was going to say a podcaster's wet dream, but we know, I don't know if that's an appropriate expression for this, but it definitely is refreshing when your guest sort of tells it like it is.
Yeah, and it was he was very respectful. I think he just to me it sounded like someone that was standing from afar observing, even though he was in the middle of all of what he was talking about. It was very interesting.
So people can find that episode 630. It's in the Toronto Mic'd archive. But then sadly, okay, and I hope you're okay to talk a little bit about this, but only a couple years later, so that was April 2020 when he was on Toronto Mic'd. In May 2022, I still remember getting the news, sad news that Andrew Krystal had passed away.
Yeah, it's I I don't know what else to say about that. I I wish I had have been closer to his original Toronto friends. I mean, I could the list goes on and on. Uh, so I was only experiencing it from my um, insulated experience with Andrew and a few of his close friends that all came to help me. But I couldn't really see the big picture. I was in complete shock and dismay and whatever other word a person could use. Lost.
Well, I can only imagine. And because I happen to know from people like Humble Howard and other friends, so that night, the night we lost Andrew Krystal was the same night, the same day that Jennifer Valentine put a video on Facebook about John Derringer. And everybody in the Toronto radio community was chatting about this bomb that Jennifer Valentine had put off. And I mean, we're still feeling the reverberations from this video today. But I know, for example, multiple friends texting with Andrew Krystal about Derringer into the wee hours of the morning. And it's the very next day we find out that Andrew had passed away. And again, I'm not trying to violate your privacy here, but it
Oh,
sounds like it was very sudden.
I yeah, yes, it was. I don't know. See, I don't know anything about John Derringer or anything about Toronto radio in those days. So these are Andrew's experiences that I really know little about. I kind of wish I'd paid a little more attention uh, to that regard. I just honestly don't know. I think that, to my knowledge, there was some sort of what I observed was that it seemed like none of the stations wanted to plop Andrew anywhere for any long period of time, and I don't understand why. But I don't have the inside
Well, I can tell
story.
you why if you want to know why.
Okay.
He's not a controllable asset. No, I'm being serious because we had similar situation with Humble and Fred at Sirius XM, where there are compliant company people who will deliver like safe product is what they're, typically it's a cable company. It doesn't have to be a cable company, but because Chorus is not a cable company. But when you have an Andrew Krystal, there's a risk, an inherent risk, and these big conglomerates, these media companies are risk adverse.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know. It's very sort of Real Housewives of pick your state and city. It's very backstabby. I know that just from my outsider observations. Very backstabby. I don't think I'd ever feel comfortable in one of those jobs. Like, okay, honey, let's go buy a villa in wherever. I feel like I'd be on my toes all the time.
I mean this as a compliment to Andrew, which is he wasn't safe because you weren't sure what he might say and do next, which
Yeah.
I think makes for an exceptional broadcaster in terms of entertainment. That's what I seek. But if you're Rogers or Bell or Chorus,
Yeah.
you're allergic to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think Andrew would fault me for saying this, but he he crossed the line with the Brian Burke thing. I don't think anyone would. I don't think there's anyone in radio that knows the comment I'm referring to would disagree with that. It was too much, and it's his style is a little too philosophical for a sports network. But that being said, I mean, would I listen to anyone else about what's going on with hockey or football other than Andrew? No, I wouldn't. Andrew knew everything about hockey and football, the two big deals there. Football, as in soccer, he wasn't a, there he's outside his lines there, but Rogers didn't care. It was all about the hockey. Oh, and sorry, baseball. Sorry, I missed that one. So the three, the triumvirate, the football, the baseball, the hockey. He had everything there is to say or know about it. Definitely.
Well, he's a well-read, knowledgeable guy, and he's not afraid to share his opinion, which he can craft. And again, maybe he wasn't a good fit at the Fan 590. I remember thinking that it was a maybe not an ideal situation for Andrew Krystal, but I had no knowledge of this Brian Burke situation.
I
And I know you're not going to tell us the specifics, but I mean, there's a couple of big Brian Burke things that popped into my head, and I don't know which one it is, but you can't give us a clue what we're talking about with the Brian Burke comments, can you?
well, I don't know if I. It was okay. So, what year would this have been? Anyway, the Leafs are tanking. Brian Burke is the general manager, and Andrew made a comment that maybe his head is in the right place over the loss of his son.
Okay. Okay. But,
That's what
but
happened.
there was no homophobia tied to this commentary.
Oh God, no, no,
Okay.
no,
I
no,
just
not
wanted
at
to
all.
clear. I didn't want him
It's
people to
just
think. Okay. Go ahead.
no, not at all. It was strictly is he up for the job? And I mean, we all know he shouldn't have said it, but there was no hatred involved. It's certainly not. I don't even think. Definitely not homophobia was not in the equation. It was is Brian Burke's head in the game is what he was saying, and Brian Burke. And I would do the same thing if I were as powerful as Brian Burke was at the time to also get in my vehicle and go straight to Don Collins and the guy's name escapes me now and do the exact same thing that Brian Burke did. But I was gobsmacked. I didn't know that he'd said it. Obviously I wasn't at his shows in the studio. I heard about all this post facto and I was like, I said, Jesus, why did you say that?
That hearing
I
you.
don't think.
Sorry, but hearing you clarify what it is regarding, because my brain went to a bunch of places, and I'm glad you kind of clarified it a bit.
Oh no, it had nothing to do with that. Andrew's own brother and nephew are homosexual, and he loved them dearly. No, if that's first of all, I didn't know that
Well,
Brian
Brendan,
Burke's late son
right?
was a homosexual, and I didn't know Brian Burke at all, and I feel kind of awkward talking about this anymore because I have no business talking about Brian Burke's family. But I can just speak on behalf of Andrew to say it didn't come from there. It was, why is this team failing? And everyone was doing that. It's usually the coach gets blamed, and so it was a finger pointing, and he took it a little too far. And the finger pointing was too personal.
And I agree 100% that he should not have said it. But at the same time, hearing it, what it was, it doesn't sound to me like it should have been like a third rail situation because, you said off the top, the greatest loss, and this is debatable, but you said it, the greatest loss you can experience is the loss of a child. And yeah, that's a devastating loss that Brian Burke
Yes.
suffered. So I actually, you know, he shouldn't have said it, and I think that's where it all ends. But I'm surprised that would be the impetus for removing him from the airwaves. It sounds like he just needs to
Yeah.
apologize
Well,
to
there
Brian.
there was there was a stew going on at the station before Andrew even walked through the doors. The whole station was a mess. They were just I don't know the analogy to use. They were just throwing things up in the air and seeing what they could catch. They had no plan. It was a disaster, and I think to my recollection, at least two other hosts filled his spot after that, if not three, until
I
they
feel like
finally decided what they wanted.
it might have been Greg Brady, who's the current morning show at 640, and it might have been Greg Brady and Jim Lang. But again, well, I'll have to dig into the archives and remind myself of all of that. But that might have been because I know that they have the job until they decide to go and get Dean Blundell, which was a disaster unto itself. But and Andrew Walker had already replaced Jim Lang, but now I'm boring you with the whole history of the Fan 590 morning shows, which, as you said, is very lengthy here. But I do, and again, Michelle, you can just say no comment, and I'll be very satisfied with that, of course. But are you able to share what happened to Andrew that night? Like, it sounded like it was very sudden, but we don't actually know in the public realm what killed Andrew Krystal.
He had heart failure.
Jeez.
That's plain and simple.
Again, sorry for your loss. Sorry for your loss. Now, that's almost 4 years ago. You shared with us off the top that you're missing your husband, Andrew. It sounds like this is not a... You can't replace that, right?
No, no. There's, like I said, there's his loss, which I consider almost every day. He's in my dreams every night. And then there's my loss. And my loss is I mean, to put it coldly, a 15-year investment down the toilet. So I can only imagine how other people feel about their loss and just the unthinkable, like it's losing a child that is 1,000 times worse. Your child is your investment. You've poured your whole life into raising someone, nurturing them, being with them, talking to them every day, and then they're just gone. And they're part of your self-identity, really. So 15 years of my self-identity just got beheaded.
It's interesting how you feel a need to point out that there are worse losses. It's almost like you're minimizing your loss. It's unnecessary because there is no ranking, right?
Lost contest. Yeah, I know. I
Hey,
know.
you lost a son? Oh, that trumps my pun not intended, by the way. This trumps my loss of a 15-year relationship. Like, that's not how life works. Loss is loss. You suffered an immense loss.
You could plunk 5 people at a bar stool, and one's going to say, yeah, I just tripped over this goddamn curb and my wallet fell out. I dropped my phone on the sidewalk and now it's all cracked. And then the next person down the bar stool is going to say, oh, you think that's bad? Well,
it's like one-upmanship.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, so now you were living downtown because I kept hearing about these parties. I was never, but why would I be? I'm just joking. I shouldn't have been invited to the parties, so it makes sense I'm not invited to the
Had
party.
I known you, he knew so many people. I don't think he could keep track of it. Really, it's not like he had some sort of. It was all in his brain. He didn't have any organized system to keep track of anybody.
Well, he had the wherewithal, or maybe people just knew to go to this address on New Year's Eve.
Oh, New Year's Day.
Oh, no. Sorry. Okay, and it was
Hell
18
no.
hours.
Okay. No, so it was 11. So it would run. So guests could arrive anytime at 11 a.m. on January 1st.
Okay.
And they could stay on as long as they want, and they could leave whenever they want. And so all the people that were hungover that would show up around 3 or 4 or 5 were the late people. And I'd have a barbecue on the roof and a turkey full of bourbon and all that stuff.
Okay,
It was a crazy thing.
It sounds crazy. It sounds amazing, and we're talking downtown, so we're talking like Bay and Bloor.
Yes.
Okay, so my
The
question
Colonnade. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with the Colonnade.
Okay, well,
Now I sound like an old lady that used to live at the Colonnade.
well, you can't be an old lady because you're my age, so it's impossible.
And when I moved in, the people that lived there already 50, oh, you should have seen what this place used to be. I don't know what is going on here. And then, oh, back in the day, and like Stan Garden, for instance, he used to have Penthouse 2. When I moved in there, Penthouse, no, sorry, Penthouse 1, where Stan Garden used to stay. He's a baseball player, you know. Do you know Stan Garden?
No, I don't know
Right.
his name. I'm
But
trying to.
these kind of characters, like Sarah Waxman, the King of Kensington, married to the King of Kensington, all the people like this, they were there in the when the place opened in like 1963. And Stan Garden has Penthouse 1, which was half the top of the colonnade with a swimming pool. Well, that when I moved in there, that penthouse went for $26,000 a month. And Stan lived there back when the place opened. So I don't know, what was he paying? $2,500 a month? Who knows? And this is pre-COVID,
Right,
obviously. It's it's pre whatever.
right.
The Bloor Street was at its finest, and these people just started mourning the loss of the building's integrity. And the fountain got torn down, and every time we went in the elevator, I'd hear another sob story about how awful the place was turning, until I turned into one of them when even further degradation happened in the building. I turned into one of the old people in the elevator complaining about what the place used to be.
Okay, so on our way to getting you to Gravenhurst, so when Andrew Krystal passes away suddenly, do you feel like his many, many, many friends and acquaintances are they there to offer condolences and to be there for you, Michelle?
Yeah, of course, they all did. There was a memorial held. Uh, Unfortunately, I'm not on any social media, so I'm not able to keep personal connections with people. But yeah, everyone that knew him and knew of what happened was there in support, definitely.
So what happens that is it simply that you were missing the double income to keep the place at Bloor and Bay, or what caused you to move to Gravenhurst?
Like I said, just to be in more close proximity to the land that Andrew left me. He had signed over to me, actually, that myself and my business partner are working on
Oh.
uh, to develop. And it's actually going really well. And it's under Andrew's name. The company's called Krystal Nature Preserve, and there's finally going to be beehives up there this year. That was the whole point, just beehives.
You got to see this movie I just saw called Begonia.
Oh,
It's
why
a
does that? Well, it sounds familiar.
Well, it is nominated for Best Picture, so it's not exactly
Oh, in this year's Oscars.
yeah, it's not
Okay.
exactly flying under the
I
radar.
know. I sort of lost my love of going to the theater with Andrew's passing. Andrew and I would always go to the theater. We were famous for uh he and I would take about 10 to 15 minutes to decide if we were going to stay in the theater or not. The movie had 15 minutes to grab us. And I can't even count how many movies he and I walked out of, and we would just get a film credit for the next run of walkouts. And sometimes we stayed if it was actually a good film.
I think that's the way to go. Like, give them 15 minutes. If the
Yeah.
movie is not to your liking,
Yeah.
go see something else.
I don't think a lot of people know this. You can walk out of the theater in a reasonable amount of time and say, I hate this movie. I don't want to be here. Or you could get really dramatic and say, this movie traumatized me and I didn't see the warnings because I had my glass on. Whatever.
Right.
You could say you have diarrhea. They'll give you a movie credit. You don't have to sit there and punish yourself for
No.
2.5 to 3 hours.
No, it's a
With
good
a bad
pro tip
movie.
there. Good pro tip there. So because I'm going to ask you about some tapes. It sounds like we're breaking into the Al Capone's vault here. Okay, I'm going to ask you about the tapes, and that's going to be explain what we're going to drop into this very episode of Toronto Mike next. But I'm worried about you in the sense that I don't know how to. I don't have any advice. I don't have any solution. But Andrew is sadly gone far too soon, and I can feel through this Zoom. I can feel your loss, and I just want to make sure you're okay.
I am, well, I mean, it depends Like, are we talking okay on paper or
No, fuck
okay
the paper.
right
Fuck the
now?
paper. Like,
No, it's horrible. No, no, I'm not okay at all.
are you talking to
But
somebody though? Like, are you speaking to? I don't
yes,
know.
I have support. Unfortunately, I've had to go to therapy over this.
Well, you say that like it's a negative, but that
Because I resent having to pay for something that
yeah.
to hear somebody tell me what I already know. It's annoying.
It's true, right? Because therapists are not covered by OHIP, but psychiatrists are.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of annoying because I already if someone else walked up to me and said what I say to the therapist, I would know what to say to that person. So we're in the grocery line and she says, "Well, I just this and that," and I would know what to say to her. So why do I have to pay 250, $300 an hour to have someone tell me what I already would tell to somebody else? It's just ridiculous to the point where it kind of zeroes itself out. Grief is what it is. The only thing that really sticks out in my mind about grief that I hear over and over again from other people is that everyone grieves differently. And so I've had some people tell me, I'm living in the past, let it go. I called a friend about this, I don't know, let's say it was a year ago, and I was bawling, and she said, "This was 3 years ago. What's wrong with you?" Uh, all over the spectrum, like, you know, it's some people just want to brush it aside and move on, and I don't disparage those people. I just can't do that. I don't want to get up in the morning and just not talk about him or acknowledge him or dismiss his life. I can't, that's not in me to do. I was raised a Catholic, and it was always do unto others as you would have done unto you. And when I pass away, I don't want to be forgotten. I don't want to just, everyone just goes upon their life and never mentions my name again. I wouldn't want that to happen to me.
Well, that's a perfect segue because I wonder aloud here if you have any concerns that Andrew Krystal's legacy, Andrew Krystal the man, the broadcaster, that he's being forgotten.
Well, people like you are abating my fears. You are kind enough to, or enthusiastic, or interested enough to do this, which means he's still here. So with people like you, other people that care, that are willing to, no matter who they are, to just keep talking about the person, keep laughing about something they did or complaining about something they did. So they matter, they exist. Everything they wrote, everything they said, everything that we all do on this earth matters. And it matters that people remember it. So that's how I personally feel.
So obviously, anybody can go listen to episode 630 of Toronto Mic'd and hear Andrew Krystal back in April 2020. That's going to be, online forever. But what I think is very interesting is what we're about to share with the listenership. And I'm hoping you'll like give us a little backstory. Like, was there like a vault or some kind of a crate or something? Like
Yeah.
tell us what you encountered and how we recovered this audio.
It was part of Andrew's effects that when we met, was, when we decided to condense our lives together, whatever you want to call it, mixing the egg and the yolk.
Right. Right. Right.
And this was just part of his stuff, is these cassette tapes that probably Victor Machado slapped together. So we're talking, 1980s cassette tapes these things were on. And they just went from us from Halifax to Toronto. And I I lament that I didn't do something about them sooner, because what a hell of a stocking stuffer that would have been. But so post mortem, I did approach, as you know, Doug Thompson about transposing these into a form that could be shared with other people. So that's what happened.
Okay, so Doug Thompson, and then for listeners who they think, oh, I think I know that name. So Doug came over to share the history of 1050 Chum as a top 40 radio station in this market. So that's Doug. He was on. He brought in some great audio as well, so we could celebrate 1050 Chum. But he's the guy you went to with these cassette tapes. So we're just talking about your traditional cassette tapes you listen to in a Sony Walkman. We're the same age, so I know we both rocked the Sony Walkman. And Doug
I think I
digitized.
go, well, my parents weren't that uh, they didn't have the dollars to fling around on a Sony.
Oh,
Come
you had a
on.
Sanyo.
It was, I don't think I had one at all. I had a, no, in fact, I am entirely certain that I did not have any version of one of those.
Okay, well, I'm blessed in that I had a Sony Walkman on me as off for all through high school and into university. But Doug Thompson digitized these tapes, so basically he ripped them to MP3. So I was able to. I think Doug shared this with me, or you did. I can't remember now, but you shared an MP3 with me, and I'm literally going to drop it in unedited at the end of our chat here. But this is basically early Mojo Radio days for Andrew Krystal. By the way, since we last talked, I remember now, Andrew Krystal was not a day one host at Mojo Radio. He took over, if my memory is correct, he took over for a chap, an FOTM, which means friend of Toronto Mike. He's been on. His name was Ripken. And Ripken got
I,
fired.
uh-huh.
So
Okay.
Andrew, but it's pretty early. By the way, we talked about this with Ripken, but Ripken got fired for anti-Semitic remarks he made to Humble Howard. So it's all
Oh,
at a hockey game. So it all comes full circle. But okay,
nothing's like a good old time Canadian hockey game like anti-Semitism. Like,
right,
there's
and that
never mind the hot dogs.
right. No, listen, and that got he went back to Winnipeg, I believe. He's from Winnipeg, but Ripken left Mojo, and Andrew Krystal took over, I believe.
When I get in trouble for saying it seems like there's a lot of racists in Manitoba.
You're not going to get in trouble with me, but you speak for Michelle Krystal. I want to let my friends in Winnipeg know.
That I have meager evidence of this.
Okay, wow. Michelle
Personally,
speaks for Michelle. Send your hate letters to her, and that's to Gravenhurst, care of Gravenhurst. So okay, so we have this digitized this audio of Andrew Krystal on Mojo Radio, which people might remember was talk radio for guys. It debuted in it launched in early 2001, and then a couple of things that really worked against Mojo Radio, talk radio for guys. One thing is 9/11 happened, and people got very serious, and Mojo Radio was not really that. So, and then secondly, I just want to remind the listenership that there was a sex scandal, a pedophile sex scandal at Maple Leaf Gardens, and Ken Dryden came in as president of MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, to basically to make sure that they changed the branding and image of Maple Leafs so that it was not related at all to what happened at Maple Leaf Gardens. But Ken Dryden would be in his car after a Leafs game, which was on 640, and would hear a sex show, and he didn't want anything sexy tied with the Leafs because of that scandal. And you talked about Brian Burke, so now we're talking about Ken Dryden when he was president. But this was a significant detail that Chorus had the rights to the Leafs game, and they were airing the Leafs games on 640, but they weren't allowed to be, risque and sexy, even at adult times, because Ken Dryden wouldn't stand for that. And that was a big reason why Mojo died.
well, based on, I mean, the broadcast you're going to air does not reflect the bulk of the material that went out on that broadcast. I mean, to try and, I mean, some of it, especially with Epstein. By the way, I feel sorry for anyone with that last name. at this point.
Right, and it's hard to even watch the Sweat Hogs on Welcome Back, Cotter.
Yeah, it's bad. So there's a lot of sketchy material in there, but just from his stories, I couldn't even bring myself to listen to what you're about to air until a few weeks ago. So I haven't heard the rest of it only through Andrew's stories. And it includes women in the bathtub and, obese people can't have sex and whatever. It was just all over the place. I think he was probably uh, resembling a Howard,
Stern.
Canadian version of Howard Stern. Yeah.
So we're gonna like literally, you and I are gonna say goodbye here in a moment, and then the listeners will hear what was recovered on this cassette tape. We broke into the vault of Krystal and we found this cassette and we digitized it. Thank you to Doug Tom. Although I also I'm pointing here to my cassette deck that's connected to my laptop because I digitized some stuff for Humble and Fred. But Doug did the dirty work there. We got this audio. I'm not editing it. I'm just dropping it, and people
Uh,
can remember this is early
and
2000s.
Yeah, and it's affordability all the way. It's crazy. If anyone can listen to the entire segment, it just gets more and more interesting. On top of that, I believe this must have segued the Winter Olympics because he's talking about Team Canada hockey.
Salt Lake City.
Yeah,
That's '02. We win gold. That's our first gold in I think 50 years.
yeah. So it's a good one.
Well, we're going to hope lightning strikes twice here and that we win gold again in Italy because those Olympics start on Friday. So you're right. It's this time period, 2002. And on our way out, I just want to say, Michelle, that thank you for your time here and for telling us a little more about Andrew Krystal and your relationship with him. I'm going to read you a note that came in when I promoted on Blue Sky that you were coming on. I know you're not on social media, but Debs just said sometimes she feels that Alan Carter, who is on City News, he's channeling Andrew Krystal, and it always makes her smile. She's very much looking forward to this show. So
Oh,
your
that's great.
husband has not been forgotten.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
And again, next time you throw a party in Gravenhurst, maybe at the new development, if it's a New Year's party, I want an invitation.
Yes, uh, will do. Thank you again.
Thank you.